A lot of people can't believe it, including a lot of politicians. Surely there won't be a war with China, but around us the preparations are starting. Last Friday and the night after that into Saturday morning, China tested the air defences of Taiwan, the democracy it threatens to invade, by sending 37 warplanes and even naval ships, many of them crossing Taiwan's defence identification zone. Taiwan is meanwhile holding military exercises to defend itself from China. But so are we. Australia this week is holding, well, our biggest bilateral military exercise with the United States, exercise Talisman Sabre, and not just with them. It's with 11 other countries as well, including Germany, Britain, Japan, and South Korea, as well as Taiwan. 30,000 soldiers in all, which is why China has sent spy ships again to check the state of our readiness for war. Joining me is Jack Keane, who's a retired four-star general who served as Vice Chief of Staff of the United States Army and is now chairman of the Institute for the Study of War. General Keane, it's always terrific to talk to you. Tell me, this exercise here, what is it actually about and why is it the biggest ever?
Yeah, well, this is quite unusual, to be sure. This is an exercise that's conducted every 2 years, and this is the 10th iteration of it. But what puts it as separate from all others is the sheer scale of it. There's 13 nations involved, 30,000 troops, and it transcends air operations, ground operations, and maritime operations with a pretty healthy dose, Andrew, of logistics. Because for many countries in the region, distance becomes a tyranny in of itself, and it is so challenging to move everything logistically and also be timely. So, yes, and I think why so many nations? Well, I think it's obvious. The countries are intimidated by China and the prospect that there may be war. And, you know, we've had President Xi tell us so. He's communicated to his military and he's shared it with us. He wants them to be ready to go to war in Taiwan by 2027. He fully would like them to capitulate and participate in reunification, his word, and certainly not the Taiwanese word. But that's likely not going to happen, and he keeps threatening the use of force. And then he reinforces those threats, Andrew, as we see by this constant military harassment of Taiwan by air interdiction and maritime interdiction on a regular basis. So the exercise is welcome. I think a lot's going to be learned from it. But I think it also will send a message to China that there's a lot of countries who are now united in dealing with the China threat, much different than it was 5 years ago. And they certainly have to take notice.
Now, you mentioned the sheer scale of the logistics there. That's one thing that concerns me, General, because, you know, we've got our government obviously knows there's a threat. It's participating in this biggest ever exercise. We're hosting it. But the most impressive weaponry we see being used is actually still America's, like HIMARS rockets and all that. I know we want some too. But as Greg Sheridan writes today in the Australian newspaper, our government's actually effectively slashed the defence budget over the next 4 years. You know, how serious, General, is this threat of war? And shouldn't we be gearing up and not down?
Yeah, well, I totally agree with that. I think the threat is serious. Certainly, we don't want this to happen. And the best way to prevent it from happening is be prepared to fight it and send that message to China. We have learned that throughout history. We kept the Soviet Union at bay because they saw right up in front of them that the Allies were willing to confront them if they came across the border, that they were prepared to do it and they had the will to do it. That is what is the best way to prevent this war. And you put your finger right on it. If your defense budget is going down, you're not kidding anybody with what's happening here. It's not about words. It's about military capability is what the generals who work for President Xi are looking at, and then the will to use them. So the defense budget in Japan is doubled. The defense budget in South Korea is on the rise. The defense budget, not too surprising, is Taiwan is increasing, and we're giving them significant military aid. So, yes, my opinion is, given the threat that's in the region, the defense budget should definitely be going up. To send a message to President Xi, don't do it. The cost is going to be too great for you as well. And that's what we're trying to do here, prevent war.
Finally, General, China's obviously been watching the war in Ukraine to see if its ally Russia, it's been lockstep with Russia here, is going to wear out the West's support of Ukraine. There's signs, obviously, in America, a number of Republicans they want to give up on Ukraine. That would, of course, prove that the West is weak and maybe won't resist China's invasion of Ukraine. Now, Ukraine has this summer launched a big counteroffensive. That counteroffensive has been slow, but has it been effective?
Yeah, a couple of things here. First of all, the Reagan Institute, who does surveys every year, and they're very reliable, indicate that 61% of Americans this year, pretty similar to last year, believe that what has taken place in Ukraine is important to the American people. So that's a good thing. I'm not suggesting that there's not opposition. As you noted, there are people on the far right of the Republican Party that are opposed to assisting in Ukraine. But overall, the American people are supporting it. Secondly, the counteroffensive is on. It's going much slower than expected. Why is that? Well, because the equipment arrived so late, and then the numbers weren't there that the Ukrainians wanted. Now, the equipment came from the United States and largely from Europeans. These are armored vehicles, artillery. They want F-16 fighter jets. Finally, I think that's going to happen. But by the time they train the Ukrainian pilots, they likely will not be effective to the end of the year and next year. It's going slow on the ground because of the minefields and obstacles that the Russians have had the opportunity to take their time to put in place, and they're formidable because the Ukrainians couldn't get this thing started sooner while they were waiting for the equipment. They made some progress, not with their armored vehicles. They made progress with their foot infantry at night because they have night sights and the Russians don't. And once they get into the trenches with the Russians pretty much capitulate. But they have to get through minefields and other obstacles. So this is going very slow. It's going to take a lot longer. To get to Kherson City last year, when they started in June, it took them 8 weeks. This is likely going to take a few months for them to really complete what they want to do. And they want to get to the Sea of Azov. And the reason why they want to do that, Andrew, is to cut off the main supply routes coming out of Russia. And if they do that, then they believe they really have control of the southern part of Ukraine so that next year they can put pressure on Crimea. It's an ambitious objective, given the defenses are out there. But I'll tell you what, I don't undervalue who they are. I don't second-guess them. They are determined. They have will. They are very innovative in what they're doing. And they're up against Russians who outnumber them, but they've got much greater determination than what the Russians have.
And I think your institute has estimated they've taken back about half the gains that the Russians had in that area. So that's something, if not yet enough. General Keane, thank you so much indeed for your time.